Hi there, disease and public health students. Just going to use these two slides to quickly review the Gladwin Ch.28 content about smallpox. We've already touched on smallpox a few times in this course, but I want to get down to the actual virus. It is caused by what's called poxviridae viruses, which I believe is kind of a whole family. They're actually very large, very complex viruses, some of the largest, most complex ones you can find. They're DNA viruses, but they're unusual in that, as we learned, RNA viruses infect cells, replicate in the cytoplasm. DNA viruses go into the nucleus and take advantage of the cell's DNA. Even though this is a DNA virus, it actually replicates in the cytoplasm outside the nucleus. It's a highly contagious disease. It actually spread through respiratory droplets and could actually survive in the air for long periods of time. And as long as it got into the nose or mouth, it would then infect the body. Characteristic symptoms were these hard white bumps that were all over the body, as you can see here. They concentrate especially on the face. And then fever would develop, and usually within 6 days after the fever developed, death, usually due to just massive overactivity of the immune system and general organ failure. Death rate was about 30%, which is pretty high compared to, COVID-19 is at about 2% maybe. And any survivors were permanently scarred. It left these sort of divots on their skin, which you could see here in this picture. However, again, I have been using the past tense and talking about a lot of this because smallpox has been declared eradicated as of 1980. Technically, the last known case, I think, was in 1977. And this was because this is the first disease to ever be vaccinated against. We learned about Edward Jenner and his milkmaids, right, that had, before that, right, they had variolation where they were taking the pustules, pus from the pustules and injecting it into people and giving them smallpox, and people would survive it. Edward Jenner went one step further. He took basically cowpox, which is what these milkmaids were suffering from, which was a much less severe form of the disease, giving that to people, and then they were kind of had like overlapping immunity then to smallpox. So that was the big step, right? And then that led to, again, we read about Edward Jenner and his crazy vaccination campaign in Southern America, but again, there's been lots and lots of vaccination campaigns in isolation, in quarantine, and again, WHO declared smallpox eradicated again at around 1980. It just exists, we've talked about it as a bioterrorism threat. Now, a couple things that I found interesting about why we were actually able to defeat this virus. Couple things. First, smallpox only infects humans. There's no animal reservoir that it's able to jump into or hide in and then jump back out, right? That's what the flu does. That's why we've been unable to eradicate the flu. The symptoms were also extremely obvious, right? These bumps, especially on the face, were easily identifiable. There were no asymptomatic carriers of this disease. So unlike something like hepatitis B, which we talked about, where there's lots of asymptomatic carriers who are unknowingly spreading it, that couldn't happen with smallpox. So all of that made it relatively easy to manage and combat, and now we have eradicated it. Hope that was helpful. Thanks.